It was just after midnight when the sound kicked in. Not loud or in your face, but in the dry, silent stretch near the southeast border of Burkina Faso. You couldn't miss it. A high-pitched were something mechanical cutting through the darkness. Then, in a matter of seconds, chaos rained from the sky. A single unmanned drone flying low and deadly quiet, locked in on a convoy crawling through the bush. No headlights, no signals, no markings. Inside, armed mercenaries decked out with Western gear, heavy-duty rifles, encrypted comms, high-end night vision. They didn't stand a chance. In one blinding flash, the lead vehicle was gone, blown to pieces. The second one flipped and burst into flames. The rest tried to scatter, but it was already too late. The drones circled back, then again, and again. By the time boots hit the ground, all that was left was scorched earth and smoke. At first, no one knew what was going on. Who gave the green light? What kind of drone was it? Where did they even get the target coordinates? Then the truth started to surface. Traore himself had ordered the strike. The drone, a foreign prototype, North Korean in origin, but tricked out with Russian tech, AEE's encrypted targeting system, dead accurate, and the intel pulled from intercepted comms and satellite triangulation out of Mali and Nigeria. This wasn't just payback. It was a statement, a warning to mercenaries, a warning to the ones bankrolling them, and most of all a wake-up call to every African nation, still pretending that the fight for sovereignty hadn't already landed on their doorstep. But Burkina Faso wasn't playing defense anymore. It was taking the fight to them. And for the first time in decades, Western intelligence admitted this one caught them off guard. The scene was brutal. Burned bodies. Vehicles reduced to twisted metal. But what investigators discovered in the rubble stunned everyone, especially senior officials. These were not random militiamen. They were professionals. Their weapons were new, their tactics sophisticated, their equipment high-end, foreign supplied, and expensive. Scattered among the rubble were American-made rifles with biometric locks. French satellite radios still connected to encrypted networks, tactical maps in English, highlighted with Burkina Faso resource sites. Then came the real shock. Fingerprints from surviving gear matched Nigerian nationals, former special forces operatives. Some had only just left elite military units. But they weren't under official orders. No military tags, no insignias, no ID, just ghosts. Highly trained, highly paid ghosts. The money trail told the rest of the story. Satellite tracking of financial transfers led to offshore accounts in the Caribbean routed through shell companies out of Abu Dhabi, London, and Paris. This wasn't some rogue freelance mission. It was organized, funded, approved. But by who? That answer got darker. Intercepted voice recordings from satellite phones kept repeating one code name, Falcon Hand. Traore's intel team had seen it before, linked to prior sabotage operations in the Sahel. A name used when dirty work needed to stay clean, when operations needed total deniability. And then one final detail flipped everything. One of the dead mercenaries had a phone still working in it, a contact saved under a chilling label DC handler. The implications were massive. This wasn't just a hired hit squad. This was a proxy unit designed to kneecap Burkina Faso's momentum before it could spark something bigger across the continent. Captain Ibrahim Traoré called an emergency session of the AES Council. The room was tense. Then he said 5 words that would define everything that followed. If they send ghosts, we send thunder. The decision to strike wasn't made lightly. Traore is a soldier, but not the reckless kind. He doesn't fire drones based on whispers. But this time, the intel was crystal clear and chilling. 2 nights before the drone strike, Burkina Faso's signals intelligence picked up an encrypted call. It bounced off 3 towers, one in Nigeria, one in Ghana, and one right in Ouagadougou. That meant one thing: there was a mole inside the capital. The call was short, full of coded phrases. But the last line triggered every alarm in the system. Operation Broken Spine begins in 72 hours. Within minutes, the cyber team cracked the data packet tied to the call. What they found was a grainy satellite image, a zoomed-in shot of the oil refinery under construction in Kudugu. It's Traore's crown jewel, proof that Burkina Faso could build its economy without foreign intervention. Control underneath the image coordinates above it. A timestamp. The message was clear. The mercenaries weren't coming. They were already there. Special forces were quietly mobilized. Meanwhile, Drone Command in Niger, already watching the region, confirmed suspicious activity in the southeast corridor. Unmarked vehicles moving at night, dodging border checkpoints, cutting through off-road routes. One surveillance image showed a man in full tactical gear, face visible, holding a map on his arm, a Nigerian military tattoo, and on his chest, a patch used by Western-trained peacekeeping forces. That was the final straw. At 3 hours 44 minutes, Ibrahim Traoré summoned his war council. 5 top officers, no politicians, just one question. If they reach the refinery, what happens? The answer came quick and heavy. We lose the project. We lose momentum, and we lose the people's trust. Traoré nodded. No emotion. Just resolve. Deploy the drone, terminate the threat. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about making a statement. It was survival. Because in this new era of warfare, you don't wait for the first shot. You stop the threat before the fire spreads. And just like that, the sky lit up. This wasn't an American drone, not French, and definitely not bought off any Western shelf. The drone that struck the convoy that night was something no one saw coming. Codename NAS-7, named after an ancient Mossy warrior queen, built under a top-secret defense tech program developed in partnership with North Korean engineers, upgraded with Russian targeting systems, and coded with Burkina Faso's own AES encrypted interface. The NA-7 could fly over 800 kilometers without refueling. But this version had a single purpose: wipe out threats before they even got close. It had already been quietly tested in northern Mali, with help from AES allies, armed with 2 precision heat-seeking missiles and a custom-designed fragmentation warhead. It was built to destroy armored convoys without damaging critical infrastructure. The perfect weapon for modern defense. And that night in southeast Burkina Faso, the NA-7 did exactly what it was made to do. But it wasn't just the drone that stunned Western analysts. It was how fast it all went down. 12 minutes. That is all it took from the moment the order was given to launch. AI systems fed live border data and identified the targets instantly. The drone hit hard, hit clean, 0 civilian casualties, 0 second chances. When U.S. satellite feeds confirmed the aftermath, analysts at ARICOM were reportedly speechless. One was overheard saying whatever they used, "We don't have anything that precise in the field," and just like that, the game changed. Burkina Faso, a country once brushed off as technologically behind, had just shown the world it could launch a fully autonomous high-tech strike using non-Western tech and do it flawlessly. No American support, no French oversight, no strings attached. The strike was public, the explosion impossible to deny, but from Abuja, Nigeria's capital, nothing. No statement, no press release, no outrage, just silence. But inside Nigeria's State House, panicked President Tinubu's national security team was caught completely off guard. Intelligence agencies were scrambling, trying to identify the bodies, but they hit a wall. Most of the men had been wiped from official records months ago. No military orders, no public affiliation, but biometric scans confirmed what no one wanted to hear. They were former Nigerian elite soldiers, now working as Black Ops mercenaries. And it got worse. Early internal reports showed several of them had trained at a foreign-run facility in Ségol, a known hub for private security contractors with Western funding ties. So why didn't Nigeria say anything? Because any answer was dangerous. If Abuja admitted these men were theirs, They risked a full-blown diplomatic crisis with Burkina Faso and its AES allies. If they denied it, they'd still have to explain how Nigerian-trained operatives ended up on a secret sabotage mission in another sovereign nation, caught between scandal and exposure. The Thai new administration chose silence, but the world didn't stay quiet. African media lit up. Outlets in Mali, Niger, and Nigeria asked the question out loud. Was Nigeria trying to destabilize Traore under Western pressure? Burkina Faso's state television ran wall-to-wall coverage, interviews with locals, gear analysis, footage of Traore's now iconic moments. Traore's intel team wasted no time. The symbols in the binder immediately flagged. They matched markings from old French military planning docs, blueprints used back during Operation Barkhane. But the real bombshell wasn't the symbols, it was the communications log. Every message packet from that binder had been routed through a server cluster in Virginia. Langley, Virginia, the nerve center of CIA operations. Within hours, Traore called an emergency session of the AES Security Council. Inside the war room, generals pored over every intercepted signal, every relay timestamp, every bit of digital chatter. The verdict: this wasn't just a Nigerian issue, it was a full-scale foreign-coordinated proxy operation, and the people behind it weren't in fatigues. They were in suits, sitting in offices in Washington and Paris, quietly signing off on plans meant to break Burkina Faso from the inside. Why? Because Traore crossed every line they thought was untouchable. He nationalized oil, kicked out French troops, refused IMF loans, and declared loud and clear that Africa is no longer for sale to the West. That wasn't sovereignty. That was insubordination. And when leaders don't fall in line, the playbook says create chaos. The CIA, long accused of stirring coups across the continent, had no comment. France denied everything except they couldn't explain why French-made military radios were found on a dead mercenary. That was the breaking point for AEE's leaders in N'Djamena, Bamako, and Conakry. Defense ministers swiftly activated a new strategy, Protocol Zero. There would be no negotiation, no compromise, just a zero-tolerance policy for any foreign interference or sabotage. And Traore, he wasn't done. Stepping in front of the cameras once more, he delivered another powerful line that would spread like wildfire. If you send agents in the shadows, don't be surprised when we send fire to light up the dark. The drone strike had already made a statement. The evidence of foreign involvement was irrefutable, but what followed was far more than just a military response. It was a movement. The heart of Burkina Faso, Ouagadougou, erupted as thousands flooded the square in front of the National Assembly, waving Burkina Bay and AES flags high in the air. This wasn't a protest. It was a celebration. He struck first. One man cried, tears streaming down his face. Young women painted war stripes across their cheeks, chanting, "Burkina is awake. Who is next?" In Mali, the sentiment was just as powerful. Students printed satellite images of the strike's aftermath, emblazoned with bold text. Don't mess with sovereignty. In Nigeria, the homeland of the mercenaries, the reaction was raw, yet tinged with heartbreak. Many were furious, betrayed by their own government's silence. Others, however, were devastated, realizing that their brothers had been used as pawns in a game they never consented to. The explosion footage was shared endlessly, edited to Afrobeat rhythms and powerful anti-colonial slogans. Murals of the NA-7 drone strike began to appear not just in Nigeria, but across West Africa. Then came the student marches from Ghana to Kenya, the DRC to South Africa. One sign summed it all up. Traore did in one night what 50 years of diplomacy couldn't. For the first time in decades, it wasn't a Western leader making headlines across Africa. It was a young, fearless, unapologetically African soldier, Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. This wasn't merely a geopolitical shift, it was a generational awakening. For every corrupt official hiding behind palace walls, there were millions of young Africans in the streets, tired of empty promises, fed up with manipulation and ready to claim what was rightfully theirs, and in a single, calculated strike, Traore had lit the match. The global reaction came fast and furious. In Washington, the White House released a carefully crafted statement. "We urge restraint and call for immediate de-escalation in the Sahel." In Paris, the French foreign minister warned Burkina Faso's actions threaten regional stability and violate international norms. The EU quickly called for emergency talks. NATO's intel networks went into overdrive, and BBC and CNN scrambled to fill airtime with special reports. Is Traore pushing Africa toward chaos? But in Ouagadougou, inside a fortified command bunker beneath the presidential complex, Traore and his top brass watched as the West squirmed. No words, just a steady, unwavering confidence. Then, without warning, Traore stepped up to the podium. No teleprompter, no rehearsed speech, just truth. To those calling for restraint, Traore's response was sharp and unyielding. "We see through the mask. You armed the mercenaries. You trained the saboteurs. You lit the fuse. And now that we've struck back, you label us the threat." He let the silence settle in, each word hanging in the air, heavy with defiance. "Burkina Faso is not your puppet. Our borders are not your playground. If defending our land makes you uneasy, good. That means it is working." The clip exploded across the internet. Even Westerners, tired of the hypocrisy, shared it with captions like, "This is what real leadership looks like." Global think tanks scrambled. Talk of a new Cold War in Africa spread like wildfire. Defense analysts began frantically calling for countermeasures. But behind closed doors, the West knew the truth. This wasn't just about a drone strike, it was about something far deeper, losing control and the fear that this could be the spark others would follow. Traore had done more than cross the West's red line. He had crossed Africa's line, the line between subjugation and sovereignty. The drone strike may have wiped out mercenaries, but that was just the beginning. The real war had just ignited. Intelligence reports flooded in, warning of more attacks already in the works. Encrypted messages from foreign servers revealed backup teams on standby, waiting for activation. But Traore didn't wait. He moved quickly, calling an emergency summit of the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. These were nations that had already cut ties with ECOWAS, expelled French troops, and rewritten the narrative of African unity. The outcome was swift and decisive. Operation Iron Shield. This was no longer just rhetoric. It was real-time cross-border military coordination on a scale never seen before in the Sahel. AES satellites were immediately reassigned to monitor high-risk zones. Encrypted communications connected Ouagadougou, Niamey, and Bamako 247T8s, linking the three capitals in a seamless web of intelligence. Joint air patrols soared above Burkina drones, Malian helicopters, Nigerian reconnaissance jets sweeping the skies, ready to neutralize any threats on the ground. The moves were even more audacious. Mali deployed elite counter-infiltration forces to shore up Burkina's borders. Nigeria rolled out mobile radar units and anti-aircraft missile systems. Burkina Faso fortified its key oil, gold, and lithium sites with AES commandos, securing the heart of its economic power. Each capital now had a command center linked in real time by satellite feeds, AI-driven coordination, and a shared fleet of drones. The message was clear. If one nation was struck, all three would respond within 5 minutes. Africa had finally found its voice, and it was no longer whispering. This wasn't just about defense. It was about sending a message, a loud, resounding warning to anyone with ill intentions. Attack one of us, and you'll face all of us. This time we stand united, and we fight back. Guinea-Chad and the Central African Republic didn't just send observers to the AE's headquarters. They came with one purpose: to talk about joining the Shield. The West didn't see it coming. In the Pentagon, They called it an alarming escalation. French analysts dismissed it as a rogue coalition. But across the streets of Africa, the people had a different name for it. The birth of Africa's first true military force. In a groundbreaking broadcast, Traore, Goit, and Chani stood together. No medals, no pageantry, just soldiers in fatigues, eyes burning with determination and a single message that shook the world. Africa is no longer weak. We are the shield and we're ready to stand tall. What the West saw as a warning shot was in reality something far greater. The drone strike, the viral broadcast, Operation Iron Shield. None of it was accidental. This was strategy, a new African doctrine. Step foot on our land with your weapons, and you won't leave it. In the days that followed, the skies were filled with activity. U.S. drones lingered at the edges of AE's controlled airspace. French intelligence units pushed deeper into AES territory, but no one dared move forward. A new reality had been born. The cost of intervention had just become too high. Then came the final word. AES intelligence leaked a single line from a top-secret memo, not to start a war, but to silence any, in bold red letters, any unregistered foreign military presence inside AES borders will be treated as hostile and neutralized without negotiation. No ambiguity, no room for diplomacy, just action. Western think tanks were rattled. Rand called it a fundamental shift in Africa's defense approach. The CIA labeled Traore as a destabilizing force of the highest order. France quietly withdrew its private contractors from Ouagadougou and Niamey. They got the message. The red line had been drawn, not with ink, but with blood, steel, and unwavering resolve. Cross it, and you are not facing one nation. You are facing a united front, forged in the fires of battle, betrayal, and an unbreakable will. And Traore, he wasn't hiding. He stood proud on a newly secured oil platform in Ouagadougou, surrounded by engineers and soldiers. A reporter asked if he feared retaliation. His answer echoed across the world. Fair is for those who borrow power, we built ours. Then he turned, his eyes fixed on the horizon, because for the first time in over a century, Africa was no longer taking orders. It was drawing its own line in the sand, daring the world to cross it. Let this story be a call to arms for every African soul who has ever been told they were weak, for every nation that has felt the sting of colonialism, of interference, of neglect. Africa is no longer on the defensive. It is standing tall, united, and ready to protect its own. The world is watching. The line has been drawn. Will you cross it, or will you respect Africa's new power? Thank you for watching, and may this fire never go out. See you in the next.